Hey sis, each month inside Entrusted Women University, we feature a brand new interview. You can watch the full interview only in Entrusted Women University, but you can check out this snippet right now.
Research. And again, the internet was still very new. So a lot of it was buying as many books as I could on how to write a book, how to publish a book, how to self publish, how to find a literary agent, all of that, how to market and promote it. All of those books I still have, but I was spending hundreds of dollars because I did not have someone to give me that information. That's sort of.
Hey, Entrusted Women, I'm so excited to be here with a brand new friend, Kimberla Lawson Roby. Hi, Kimberla, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you, Kia?
I'm doing good. Y'all, I meet people on the internet. And so I have been seeing Kimberly, seeing Kimberly. I was like, who is that? And come to find out, she's like a powerhouse. She's written a truckload of books. And so we're going to talk about her journey, but then she has a new nonfiction read, and we're going to just get into all the things. So if you don't know Kimberly, I'm just going to read her bio real quick, and then we're going to jump into it. She's a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author, speaker, encourager of women, and podcast host. She has a strong passion for helping women become the best that they can be in all areas of their lives. Additionally, with 30 years of writing and publishing experience, Kimberla has published 30 books, including her two most recent titles, The Woman God Created You to Be, Finding Success Through Faith, Spirituality Personally and Professionally, and The Woman God Created You to Be, the companion workbook and discussion guide. And she sold more than 3 million copies. I can't even fathom that, of her books. She is the 2013 NAACP Image Award winner for Outstanding Literary Work Fiction for her novel, The Reverend's Wife. In 2020, she was named by USA Today as one of the 100 Black novelists you should read. And in February 2021, her first nonfiction book, The Woman God Created You to Be, Finding Success Through Faith, Spirituality Personally and Professionally, was nominated for an NAACP Award for Outstanding Literary Work. Instructional giving for her 4 NAACP Image Awards in total. She is the founder and owner of two companies, Linux Press and Successful Women of Faith LLC, and she resides in Illinois with her husband, Will. Woo, child. We got it all out. Oh my goodness.
Oh my.
Okay, so you are an OG.
Yeah, I kind of realize that now. I didn't think that necessarily, but I was invited to an event several months ago. And so it's an event where lots of younger writers, or they're new writers to the industry. They may have only, been in the industry in the last couple of years or so, no more than 5. And I saw, which it was a nice compliment. Someone was really excited, and they were like, "Oh no, the OG is going to be there, and I got to get my ticket." And so it's very endearing though to be referred to that way. And so now I can't help but get excited just about any piece of advice, any mentoring, any question that I can answer for new writers, and especially since there was no one available to answer any of those questions for me when I was just starting out. So I feel an obligation, but I also find great joy in being able to do that as well.
And I was hesitant to say OG. I was like, she may be like, what you call me? But I mean, you are in that category. And then also, dare I say, auntie, you know how, in Black culture, we call everybody auntie,
Yes.
and unc and things like that. But there is a level of respect that I do want to say that in terms of you as an author, period, but then you as an author of color, because that's significantly different, I think, to have had the measure of success that you've had as an author of color. And to your point, you said there was nobody there for you to say, hey sis, can you
Right.
help me navigate PR or navigate the media or navigate book sales.
Yeah.
Was social media a super big thing when you started, or no?
Well, no, it wasn't even, as my grandparents say, it's like, you weren't even thought about. Well, it wasn't even thought about
No.
at that point. So I started writing in 1995. So the
Wow.
internet, I don't believe I even started using that for the first time until maybe the next year in 1996. So it was a very, very different time. But now at least we had access to email, and websites were available. And so I reached out to a couple of authors that I was already reading and enjoying, didn't hear anything back. And so I had to learn everything I could on my own. There were no mentors for me, and I just had to read everything I could find and research. And again, the internet was still very new. So a lot of it was buying as many books as I could on how to write a book, how to publish a book, how to self publish, how to find a literary agent, all of that, how to market and promote it. All of those books I still have, but I was spending hundreds of dollars because I did not have someone to give me that information. That's sort of even how I started thinking much more about doing writing and publishing master classes. I had been asked by writers for many, many years and never really thought so much about doing it. But I realize now, yes, by doing that and having this access to be able to teach others online, I can cut that learning curve quite a bit, and talk about not just what's important, what you need to do it the right way, but hopefully to help you not even make some of the mistakes that I've had to make along the way.
Wow, that is so good. And the other thing, I mean, wow, you're saying a lot of things. One of the reasons why Entrusted Women exist is to equip Christian women communicators of color. Because when I got started, which was like maybe 8 or so years ago, when I went to my first writing conference, I really could count on maybe one hand the people of color, that the women of color that were in the room. And
Yeah.
I'm saying just across the spectrum, not just
Yes.
black women, but Latina women, Asian women, biracial women, just period. Anybody with any inkling of melanin. I
Hmm.
just didn't see us. And I was like,
No.
if we're not in the room, then we're not getting the dissemination of information. And that troubled me. So
Hmm.
I can only imagine how much more um, significant it would have been for you in 1995 and 1996 to start educating people of color on the publishing process, not just the indie process, but then the process for traditional publishing
Yeah.
as well.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And because now you're trying to figure out how to find a literary agent. And again, I had to read books and learn everything I could, and then find these listings of agents to even know who to query. And knowing that, well, if you're going to query a literary agent, you certainly want to only be looking at agents who are already interested in the genre that you're writing in. So you want to know who they've already represented it, what books have they sold. It's all of that it would be so great if you had someone to steer you in the right path and to just give you some direction when you're now moving into this area, this arena that you really know absolutely nothing about. And so, yeah, that would have made an amazing difference, just to even be able to have a conversation. I'm willing to pay for that. But if someone would have said, here's my consultation fee, we can get on the phone for 60 minutes, I would have jumped at the chance to do that. Yeah, but it just was not available.
Wow. And but even in spite of all of the challenges that you faced early on, you've had crazy success. I mean, just crazy success. What I kind of want I got so many questions. One, what do you attribute that to? But then also I'm like, well, let's start there. I need to calm down. Let's start there with, what do you attribute your success to? Of course, your writing, but what else? Because you had to get your name out there. You had to build a following. You had to break through barriers.
Hmm.
How I'm like, how do you even do that without the internet?
And that's the thing, it was a very different day. And so when we're talking about marketing and promoting and publicity, that was a very different day, because with social media and with the internet, you're just able to do so much more. You have so much more access to people throughout the country and throughout the world. And again, that wasn't the case back then. And so it did not hurt. And I thought about this because I used to think, wow, I wish that I always loved writing from the time I was a small child, and my teachers always complimented my writing. My sixth grade teacher is my most memorable, who just really encouraged me and said, I hope that you will do something with this as you continue to get older. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to it, but yes, writing felt natural to me all the way through high school, junior high, wrote for the school newspaper in junior high school, college. If I had to write a paper for an assignment, no matter how many pages, I could really do that the day before and turn that in. Still didn't think much about it. Majored in business. And I used to think back, wow, I wish I had majored in writing or journalism or creative writing, something along those lines. I probably would have gotten started a lot sooner than when I was 30 years old, because I was 30 when I finally sat down to start writing, the first book. But what I realize now is God always has a plan. He always knows what he's doing. And so majoring in business and having a love for marketing, I think that made a difference for me, because that made me not only create just a business plan when I was rejected by all the literary agents and all the publishers that I submitted that first manuscript to, decided to self-publish. So yeah, there was a business plan that I had to create. But for me, the most important piece was the marketing plan, because if my husband and I were going to invest a certain amount of money, and I realized it was going to be quite a bit, that I would have to figure out a way to promote it, not just locally or even regionally. I needed to figure out, how am I going to promote this on a national level? And so that was my mindset. That was what was at the forefront of my thinking. And as it turns out, and I'm not sure how many there are now, I think, we're seeing new independent Black bookstores open up a little bit more again over these last few years. But back then, I knew of at least 300. I had this listing and a book that gave you the information, the name of the owner, the name of the store, and it was based by state, if I'm not mistaken. I think I may still have that book. I'm going to have to pull that out. And I wrote a letter and sent a copy of the book to as many of them as I possibly could. And I started hearing back from them. And it was just saying, my name is Kimberla Lawson Roby. I've written this book called Behind Closed Doors. You've probably never heard of me, but I'm asking if you'll read it. And if you enjoy it, will you recommend it to your customers? Will you buy copies? It was that kind of a letter. Will you let me know what you think of it? Those were the questions. And I heard from a woman by the name of Emma Rogers, who owned a store called Black Images in Dallas, Texas. At the time, it was one of the most well-known independent Black bookstores in the country. And she called me, and she just made it her life's work that year, going into 96. And she called it her baby. And so she was recommending it to every single customer that came in to the store. Then she started calling up bookstore owners in others in Dallas and in other cities and states. And it was just this chain reaction. And so it was just God's grace and mercy and his plan, that it turned out that way. Then I started submitting it to Barnes and Noble Corporate and gave them a copy of my marketing plan. My husband and I were going to finance my own, our own book tour. He was going to drive me around some of the places we flew to. And I said, this is what I'm going to do to promote it. And Barnes and Noble ordered, I think it was 30 copies for 3 different stores, just to start out to see what happened. And then the next thing we knew, my mom and my husband and I, we would take 3 cars and we'd be taking hundreds of books out to UPS, because then Ingram started ordering, because they were getting all these orders from bookstores and libraries, and one thing just sort of led to another. And the next thing I knew, those first 3,000 copies were gone, in probably a good 3-4 months. Then I did another printing of 5,000, but I had sold just over 10,000 copies within the first 6 months of being self-published.
That's my real response. That is my real What?
Yeah. So it was a, as they say,
Wow.
boots on the ground type, grassroots sort of, I'm all in, this is what I focus on every day, all day type of thing. I mean, that is literally what it took. Yeah,
But
hands down, that's what it took.
I think that we have probably been crippled because with social media, because we're like, oh, I'm just gonna post a graphic
Yes, yes. And
of my book
I'll be,
on Instagram to
yeah,
my 4,000 followers, or to my 2,000, or to my
yeah, yeah,
200 followers, and boom, it's gonna take off.
yeah. And then there are crickets.
And then there are crickets. And I
Hmm.
think what you had in being a business major, and just probably just being business minded, period, without even having a degree, is a strategy to sell the books.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, it's been my experience, and as an individual, as an author, and then as I interact with new authors or would be authors, we have the book idea, but when it comes to the strategy on how we're going to sell said book, we don't have that.
No.
And what you just said is blowing my whole mind. I love it, and I need to get myself together. And I think the other thing that you had that is also new to authors is um a healthy awareness of rejection and a healthy response to it. Because for many, that's all new. Rejection? What you talking about? You don't like my writing? What?
Hmm.
What are you talking? What's wrong with you? It's
Yeah,
something
that's a
wrong with you,
blow.
not me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Did you just were you just aware that rejection was just part of the process, or
Oh gosh, no. I was very naive when it came to just the whole art of being rejected. And I share this all the time. This is probably the best part of my rejection story, and how little I knew and how high my expectations were. So when I compiled a listing of, it was about 14 literary agents, and put these query letters together. In some cases, if they said I could submit the first 3 or 4 pages, I did. In some cases, they wanted the first chapter. And so sent these letters out. And I remember when I had sent them all out all at one time, I started thinking, oh, wow, maybe I shouldn't have sent it to so many, because how will I choose one and turn down the other 13? That's where my thinking was. That's how much I believed that, oh my, because like you said,
that's great.
surely
That is you
all
got
of them are going to be
it.
interested in representing me. They're going to really like this book. And next thing I knew, I was being rejected one after another, until I was rejected by every single one. So that's when I realized, oh boy, this is not going to be easy. And I was really disappointed and discouraged to some degree. And of course, you're starting to feel like, okay, this isn't going to work, and you're thinking about giving up. And then I thought, well, publishers, I'd done my research enough to know they don't want to receive what they call unsolicited manuscripts. So that's why I was searching for an agent. But then I thought, I can't find anyone. So I don't have anything to lose. So I compiled another list, a much shorter list, but editors who had purchased books that fell into contemporary fiction for women, and those that were written by Black authors. So, at that time, it was Terry McMillan, it was
Terry
B.B.
McMillan.
Moore Campbell, yeah, it was
Mhm.
Connie Briscoe, and there were a few that were out there for contemporary fiction. And so then I found some others, but again, I was rejected by every single one of them. And I had made my mind up to give up at that point. And then my
Huh.
mother just couldn't hear of it or see it. And then my husband said, why can't you take your background in business? He's talking about my business degree and all my work history. I'd worked for major companies here locally. Why can't you take that business background, start your own company, and publish the book yourself? That's the only reason I even entertained the idea of doing that, was because he suggested it.
Wow. My goodness.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of men Would have been like, babe, you need to take yourself back to corporate America and get a job.
Well, the thing is I was still working while writing full time, and
What?
yeah, and then I worked all the way through the self-publishing process, preparing the book and getting it ready, all the way to when those first 3,000 copies arrived at our home and we had the opening reception. And then it was my husband, Will, again, that night of that party. He said, "So you do know when you go back to work this week, you're going to have to give your 2-week notice." And then I thought, wow, he's really lost his mind because, you know, we're going to go from 2 incomes to one based on what if it works. And so I'm not the risk taker. That's not how I was seeing things. But he said, I get it. I can understand why you're worried. No, we won't have money to just toss away. We won't be able to do a lot of the things we normally do, but we'll be able to pay our bills. But if you don't give this 100% of your time, then I think maybe you won't be successful. And so I was terrified, and because I kept thinking, what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? And so I said that to him, and he said, well, if it doesn't work, then you'll just move on and go back to what you were doing or something similar. But do you want to go years down the road? Let's just say 10, that was his example, wondering if you could have been successful with it. Would you want to be able to just keep wondering about that? So he has been the support of a lifetime. I will forever be able to say that he believed even when I didn't believe in what I was doing
Wow.
myself. Yeah.
Oh my word. That is a whole story. Is that in the book somewhere?
Yeah, in The Woman God Created You to Be, I talk about
Okay.
that
I'm
whole
gonna say you
process.
need to write
Yeah.
another book. Okay, so good. Okay, let me see. So did God say to you, did you feel a calling? Because a lot of people are like, God told me, God told me I'm supposed to write this book. I'm supposed to put
Yes.
my pen my story. I'm supposed to da 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 da. Then they don't
Mhm,
do nothing.
mhm.
But you have done 30 books. So I'm like, at some point, did it move from just something you like to do, you're interested in doing, to like, I feel a literal mandate from God to do this work?
Well, it was me, going to school, majoring in business, and even before I finished my degree, one corporate job after another. 9 months to 12 months, I'm moving on to the next job. I'm still not climbing, moving up in terms of being promoted. And so I'm one to the other. Then I eventually worked for state government. Then I eventually worked for city government. And so I was never happy. And I realized, okay, what's wrong? Why am I not getting ahead? Why am I not finding success? Why am I not happy on jobs after X amount of months? And because I always felt like something was missing. And
Hmm.
that's when I did go into prayer. And it just wasn't long before God reminded me about my love for writing, all the way back to my childhood and what my teachers said, and what especially my sixth grade teacher said, my journalism teacher, when I wrote for the school newspaper, when I was in junior high school. I thought back to all of that. And even then, when I thought about it, from time to time, especially as I was preparing to graduate high school, I started thinking more about writing, but I looked at the salaries of writers, and that's what made me say, no, I'm not going to be a writer. That's, not going to happen. And so
Right.
that was it. But that's also why I share with writers as many as I can. Don't let money be the deciding factor when you're trying to figure out what it is God has placed you on this earth to do. Think about purpose, think about calling, think about the gifts and the talents and the abilities that He has given you, because He's given them to you for a specific reason. Well, I wasn't concerned about that. I just wanted to earn good money. And that's how I ended up unsatisfied. That's how I ended up moving from one job to the next. And so again, yeah, I was 30 years old when I finally said, I'm going to sit down and do this. And I was still working full time. By then, I had a job that I loved. I was a housing financial analyst for community development for our city,
Wow.
and helping low to moderate income home buyers get into their first home. And which was great. I loved that job. And so, but by then my mind was made up. And so I would come home and just write every evening, every evening, every weekend, go to work from 8 to 5, come home, get something to eat, change clothes, and write. And that's what I did from April through the very end of 1995.
Hey sis, I hope you enjoyed that interview snippet, and I want you to be sure and check out Entrusted Women University by visiting membership.entrustedwomen.com to see the interviews in their entirety. And join us next week for more content to help you on your writing and speaking